Hello, fellow builders, and welcome back to the bench. Mediocre Modeler here, ready to go build something. Yeah, use your thing, go build something. But before we go anywhere, before we do anything else, I have to give you the word of the day. Now, it'll come into play a little bit later, but for right now, you just need to know what the word of the day is. The word of the day is persnickety. Okay? Persnickety. What is persnickety? Or for our friends across the pond, it may be pernickety. But for us, adjective, North American English, informal, placing too much emphasis on trivial or minor details. So one more time, say it, lady.
Persnickety. Persnickety.
Okay. Now, like I said, we'll get back to that. But what are we building? Okay, I love the sci-fi. We all know that. There's no mystery there. I love the sci-fi. And if I was going to be in a sci-fi thing, or I found myself in a sci-fi situation, what I always look like when you're looking at a TV show, you always look at the technology. Does the technology feel sci-fi? Do the weapons and the vehicles feel sci-fi, right? One of the other things that makes you feel sci-fi is if you have a robot companion of some sort. And it's a old sci-fi trope. I mean, look, Luke's got R2, right? You've got Will Robinson has robot. Heck, Doctor Who even has canine. So it's a thing. But the robot we're talking about, the robot companion we're talking about this time, is Twiki from Buck Rogers in the 25th century. So I don't want to just assume that everyone knows Buck Rogers. But in case you don't, here you go.
The year is 1987, and NASA launches the last of America's deep space probes. In a freak mishap, Ranger 3 and its pilot, Captain William Buck Rogers, are blown out of their trajectory into an orbit which freezes his life support systems and returns Buck Rogers to Earth 500 years later.
I'm going to have to make myself a reminder to do a show on Media More about some of the great sci-fi intro, because that's got to be in the top 10. You got to love an intro that tells you the story of what the show is about every week. I mean, it's anywho. If I were Buck Rogers, that would be kind of cool. You're in this future that you don't know, and hey, here's a robot to help you through life. That's kind of cool. I always thought that Twiki was a great character. So when I got a 3D printer and I was looking for things to print, obviously Twiki was one of the ones that I wanted to, because I think there was a toy, but there was never a model. And you know, I'm more of a model guy than a toy guy. So when I finally found one, I printed it. And this is back when I had my 3D printer, my first 3D printer. And look at that. Okay. We'll touch on this, but It came out pretty. You couldn't look at that. Look at that. Beady beady beady. What's up, Buck? You can't beat that. That's just fantastic. And you know the body. So it comes in not a whole lot of pieces. You have pegs to hold on the shoulders, but is that backwards? Yeah. So with the legs on there, right, and then the head. That's not bad. It's a good size. And I've had this for a while. Just put it in a bag. I'm like, I'll get to it. I'll do it someday. And when I had just the filament printer, this was fantastic. The detail with the filament printer is just fabulous. I was so happy with it. But there were a couple of pieces that weren't so fabulous. Like the hand. Look at that. You see how the thumb part just didn't come out right. And that was on both of them. And then like part of the arm, you can see like right around. You may not be able to, oh, see, look, I just twisted his thumb off. And if you look at the bottom edge of his body, you can see where the supports were. And on the filaments, it's always kind of ragged. Hence, his head. So I printed it upside down. So to make sure I got the detail on the face. Well, the problem was all the supports were on the crown. And so when I peeled that support material off, he had a very jagged and bumpy head. And I was going to have to smooth it out. So what got me decided to work on this a couple of weeks ago, I was watching another builder. I was watching Bill Duran. And he was working on a 3D print. And what he did was he took the 3D print that he wanted to get rid of some of the layer lines on. And he dipped it in the resin. And he brushed off as much of the extra as he could. And then he cured it. And I'm like, well, that'd be a great idea to fix Twiki's head. And then and if it works well enough, I'll do it all. But normally, before that, this is how I would have done it. I would have gotten the Bondo out, and I would have coated it with Bondo, and I could sand it down. And I can still do that with this, and it'll probably come out just fine. Probably. There might be a little bit of unevenness in. But even on top of that, then if you look at the face, you can see the layer lines. And that's where the word of the day comes in. Persnickety. Because the plan was to just reprint the head. If I could reprint the head, and the head looks great, then I could use all the rest of the pieces because they're all going to be the same size. The legs, I'm like, oh, the legs look just fine. I could use those. But you can see the layer lines on there. But stop it, you're just being persnickety. You can still see them. And then the body, you had the parts with the body, and that was an issue. And then with the pegs, in order for the pegs to put in to hold the piece together, one of the pegs, I sanded it down, the one that holds the head on. And it just, this plastic just doesn't sand well. So my persnicketiness made me decide to reprint the whole thing in resin. So that's what I did.
Now there's a sight for sore eyes.
All right. So I'm not completely giving up on this guy. because the thumb part didn't print well and basically just fell off, I'm not gonna use that piece at all. So I printed new hands that are gonna go with this. The next thought is possibly replacing the pegs. The pegs over here. Let's see. I may end up reprinting the pegs because I can reduce the size of these pegs by, say, 10% or whatever to get these to fit in. Yeah, see, I mean, oh, come on. Okay, I'll separate that. But the point being, this guy isn't completely useless. Now, when I reprinted the head, I didn't necessarily get it right the first time. So this guy here, I tried to print it flat on the bed, and you could see it didn't print quite well because I've got this defect on the chin, and there was resin trapped in there, and that's where the foot was. I had to break all that off. So the first attempt to print this flat on the bed did not work. So I ended up having to reprint it upside down. And you can see all the little nibs where the support structure was. But see, like I said, that can be sanded off. Not a big deal. And the main thing was, I knew, just looking at the differences in the body, there are no layer lines. I even, on this side, the resin, normally on my resin, I use acetone to clean it, and acetone is just very harsh. It's not cheap. So I'm switching over to 91% isopropyl alcohol to clean. It takes a little bit longer to clean the parts, but it does a very good job. I do have a little bit of a blemish right there, and I had the same thing. I had a little bit of a blemish right here on his face, and all I did with that, and what I'm going to do with this, is go get a straight pen and just dip it in the resin and fill that little bit of that little scoomy up, that little divot, and stick it back in the curing chamber and let it cure for 2 minutes. That way I can sand it down. It'll be all nice and smooth before I put a clear coat on it. This is gonna bother me. Yeah, get over there. But yeah, these pieces are going together so well. So let's get some sanding done. And this is why I love resin prints. The surface area is so smooth, I can start sanding with a 320 grit sandpaper. Oh, yeah, that, yes.
What the f*** did they catch now?
Oh. The pegs for the arm and the head are the same, and I was having trouble test fitting them into the body. So I came up with an idea of sanding them down. What I decided to do was glue it to a flathead screw, stick it in the drill, and then sand it that way. Okay, so here's the plan. What I was doing before was trying to reduce the diameter so that the peg would fit inside the shoulder piece. That wasn't working. Then I thought, okay, it's plastic. If I heat it up enough, I could compress the top end. That's why there's a slit in the peg, so it will go into the hole that it's supposed to. And once it's in there, it'll cool down, and then I'll be fine. So that's what I'm doing. I'm heating it up, and let's see what's going to happen. So it's kind of fitting in there. It just needs a little bit of pressure, I feel like. If I can get it just a little bit warmer and just push hard enough. But I also have to keep in mind that I have to get the other end as well once I get the peg in the one side. And it's hot. At this point, it's in there at an angle, and I figure if I get it enough pressure, I can get it in there. Just one more really good stern push. Okay, that didn't work. Okay, we're gonna try and reprint the pegs 10% smaller. Let's try that. Well, we tried a couple of things. I did actually try the reducing the peg size by 10%, and what that got me was, well, it really didn't get me anywhere. The head of the peg was a little bit smaller. I still needed to sand it down a little bit. But once I got it inside the arm socket, then the diameter of the socket to the peg was off. It wasn't a nice solid fit, and the arm kind of wobbled. So, but then I had this standby styrene tube. Ouch! That's why you put the hook there. Put that there. Okay. I've got this styrene tube which fits nicely in the peg holes. And I'm like, okay, let's just use that. But I was trying to be cute and also use the magnets, because the magnet actually fits right inside that hole. And so I was going to glue a magnet inside the body and the other side in the tube, and that way you would have the rotation that you needed, right? But it wouldn't just pop out. But I was having trouble getting the glue to stick to the resin, and then it was just a nightmare. And I finally came to the conclusion that Twiki's arm never rotated like that. It doesn't, I mean, if he bends it right here. So basically, I can just glue that in place, because I was looking at the model and there's no seam there. And same thing with the head. I can just print another or cut another one of those, put that, and then pop the head like right onto the body. We're good to go. So that's what we're gonna do. Sometimes your persnickety-ness makes you completely overthink everything, and it frustrates me because I feel like I wasted time. I did record some of it, but that's the beautiful thing about that. I can just delete it. Don't have to waste your time by seeing it. But what does that mean? That means I'm going to, I need to repair. Like I said, there's this one little divot right there, like a little blemish. That what I want to do is I want to fill that with resin and cure it so I can sand it down so his chest is smooth. And then I'm going to glue on both the arms. And then I'm going to fill the seam. So the divot I'm trying to fill is right there. Real small. And here is a piece of support from the resin print. So all we're going to do, this is all we're going to do. Get a drop on the smallest drop we can get. Just lay it in there. Just smooth it out just a little bit. And we're going to cure it for 5 minutes. Hush you. You know what? We don't even need to do all that. Forgot I picked up this guy. It's a UV flashlight. I should be able to do this. Alright, well let's go lightly sand this and see what we get. I started off with the 320 grit sandpaper but moved to a 400 grit sanding stick. That gave me a little bit more control. I felt pretty good about the way it looked, so I went on ahead and glued the arms on. I did get them symmetrically even, but that's just that persnicketyness coming out again. I normally use Bondo to fill seams, but this time I decided to go with the Milliput. Finer detail was the thought. And finally, I wanted to lightly sand the leg so I could prime and paint it. Looked up the cure time for the Milliput. Looked up the cure time for the Milliput, and it's about 3 hours. So I'm kind of dead in the water. I don't want to mess with this until I know that Milliput is really, really cured. So we're setting that aside. Speaking of Bondo, this is the filament printed head, and like I said, the crown of the head was just, it wasn't even all there because of the support material. And this is why I like the Bondo. Bondo does a really good job of filling in those voids, and you can just sand it and it's going to come out great. There's a part of me that thought I wanted to use the Bondo on Twiki's arms, but sometimes getting in those crevices isn't as easy with the Bondo. So, and if I'm being honest, I'm not a real big fan of the Milliput. We're going to see how well this goes. But the other reason that I went with the resin print is, as nice as I got his head, you still have the print lines across his face in the filament. And that just, I don't like it. I just don't like it. Also find it funny that they decided to give Twiki bangs. Why? That never, okay. And then the leg. So all I did with the leg was I did a light sanding, did a coat of the Tamiya primer, and put some paint on there to see how badly you could still see the print lines. Because they're very light, and I didn't want to lose any of the detail of his rivets or anything. and I'm not happy with that. So what I'm on the other leg, I'm doing a test. I'm using automotive primer. It's a filler primer. So I've coated that, sprayed the other leg with the filler primer. I'm going to get a good sanding on it, and then I'm going to lay some paint on it. I checked the cure time on it. It's about 3 hours. So we're in a holding pattern. There's not much we can do. So we're just going to stop here. I thought I could get it done in one shot, but no. Well, in the meantime, it's time for you. You can go and beady build something. I could not resist. I'm sorry. It was Twiki. I couldn't resist. But yeah, get something going. Find some obscure model out there that you haven't, that you've got tucked back in the corner that you've been just waiting for that rainy day to do. And let that inspire you to just, sometimes you got to dig into the difficult stuff. Just get yourself going. Get those juices flowing. So, anyway, yeah, go build something. But until next time, have fun, be safe, and go build something. Pew 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 pew.